Tonight, as part of his promise to reduce government spending, President Trump is making more than 2 million federal workers an offer. Quit now and accept a severance package. NBC News first reporting federal employees received the offer by email late this afternoon. The White House expects 5 to 10% of the federal workforce to accept it, which could lead to $100 billion in annual savings.
Trump, presumably, in his attempt to install loyalists in his administration, in all aspects of government really, has sent an email to federal workers basically offering to buy them out of their jobs. 3 million employees were asked to resign with the promise of 8 months' pay if they promise to leave their jobs, a deferred resignation by next week. If they don't take the money, they still run the risk of being laid off or reassigned, but by that time, of course, it will be too late for them to take the money.
And they received an email that said, from the administration, if you tender your resignation by next Friday, we will guarantee you payment through the end of September, whether or not you show up for work. So tender your resignation, and then, boy, it's just going to be a gravy train. You're just going to get paid for 7 months without working. The president has no authority to make that offer. There's no budget line item to pay people who are not showing up for work. This is a guy who made this promise to contractors again and again and again when he was a private business guy. Oh, come work for me on my casino. Come work for me in a hotel. We're going to do a handshake. We're going to do a contract. The contractor does the work and then finds out they get stiffed. So my message to federal employees who receive this is, yeah, the president has tried to terrorize you for about a week and then gives you a little sweetheart offer. If you resign in the next week, we're just going to pay you for doing nothing for the next 7 months. Don't be fooled. He's tricked hundreds of people with that offer. If you accept that offer and resign, he'll stiff you just like he stiffed the contractors. He doesn't have any authority to do this. Do not be fooled by this guy.
It seems to be a combination of a scare tactic, a not-so-veiled threat that Trump wants who he wants in government jobs, and that if you choose to stay, you are choosing to give your unquestioning support to the MAGA agenda, and an attempt to sow continuous chaos and uncertainty among the American people. The move is already being called unconstitutional, not to mention unprecedented. Just a reminder that people in these jobs are not elected officials. They're just people with jobs, and those jobs are not typically contingent upon which administration is in office. Many people hold these jobs for years or decades through several administrations despite party leadership. Of course, this is not even the worst or most shocking thing that's happened this week. It's not the most disruptive thing that's happened, nor is it the most perplexing thing that has happened. And if it feels like so much craziness is happening all at once, especially in the midst of confirmation season, you're absolutely right that it is a lot of craziness happening all at once. It's designed to dishearten and distract, to inundate and overwhelm, to sow confused social discord that is so scattered and disorganized that any uprising that could possibly occur from any of it will be disjointed and disordered. Oh, and should any meaningful large-scale uprising actually occur, don't worry. Trump already has threatened to deploy the U.S. military on U.S. soil against any radicals. And if you're thinking, no, that's not legal, that's not allowed, he can't do that, we don't have martial law in this country, well, in the less than 2 weeks since Trump has already been in office, he has pushed, if not completely disregarded, several legal and constitutional boundaries. Who's to say he won't continue to do so? He's already talked about wanting to.
2020, then President Trump directed former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper to shoot protesters in the legs in downtown D.C., an order Secretary Esper refused to comply with. Would you carry out such an order from President Trump?
Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard unit that was in Lafayette Square during those events.
Would you carry out an order to shoot protesters in the legs?
I saw 50 Secret Service agents get injured by rioters trying to jump over the fence, set the church on fire, and destroy a statue.
That sounds to me that you will comply with such an order. You will shoot protesters in the legs.
Author Naomi Klein used the term shock doctrine to explain a lot of what's happening now. It's not a new term, but she said, I use the term shock doctrine to describe the brutal tactic of using the public's disorientation following a collective shock, wars, coups, terrorist attacks, market crashes, or natural disasters, to push through radical pro-corporate measures, often called shock therapy. Though Trump breaks the mold in some ways, his shock tactics do follow a script, and one that is familiar from other countries that have had rapid changes imposed under the cover of crisis. She goes on to explain further, this strategy has been a silent partner to the imposition of neoliberalism for more than 40 years. Shock tactics follow a clear pattern, wait for a crisis, or even in some cases, as in Chile or Russia, help foment one. Declare a moment of what is sometimes called extraordinary politics, suspend some or all democratic norms, and then ram the corporate wish list through as quickly as possible. The research showed that virtually any tumultuous situation, if framed with sufficient hysteria by political leaders, could serve this softening up function. It could be an event as radical as a military coup, but the economic shock of a market or budget crisis could also do the trick. Amid hyperinflation or a banking collapse, for instance, the country's governing elites were frequently able to sell a panicked population on the necessity for attacks on social protections or enormous bailouts to prop up the financial private sector because the alternative, they claimed, was outright economic apocalypse. Constant crisis, whether naturally occurring or maliciously fabricated, creates an atmosphere that is ripe and even welcoming to radical change that would otherwise be deemed excessive or even authoritarian. It creates desperation among the masses for things to just settle down or go back to the way they used to be. Either that or people will just be tempted to tune it all out completely, choosing ignorance for the sake of their mental health over informed helplessness and depression. And I do this type of work for a living, and I tune out as much as I can while remaining informed. It's a tricky balance, and I don't always get it right. But that's why if you follow me on social media, you'll notice that I don't post very often. And when I do, it's usually about nothing to do with politics. And maybe that means I'm bad at doing this kind of work. That's possible. My colleagues have way more followers and engagement on their social platforms than I do, and I am fine with that. I respect the work that they do, though, the time and effort they put into their activism, even when they're technically not on any clock. But even for people who don't do work like this, there's still this constant compulsion to stay informed and to inform others of everything happening in the world all at once. None of this is natural, at least not to the degree to which this way of existing has become normalized. And the overwhelm we feel is the direct result of how unnatural it all is. We feel like we can't breathe, let alone think. We've forgotten how to have quiet moments. In fact, quiet moments have become a luxury or a flex even. Regular people can't afford to have quiet moments anymore. Those are moments when we're either supposed to be doom scrolling or hustling, or both. 2025 will be an interesting and, yes, I imagine, a distressing year for everyone, but I don't have a solution or suggestion to offer you. I'm very sorry. I just hope that we can all learn to weather this storm together without turning on one another, while also educating ourselves as to what the bigger picture really is. All right, that's it for me. And if you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more.